Welcome to Sullivan Street, where we are going to do the Rain King episode. And I guess I'll preface by saying when I think of the Rain King, my college roommate, he was the self proclaimed Rain King when, because he was a college freshman when that song came out. Then I kind of want to be the Rain King when I see Adam capturing the adornment, I guess, of the crowd and thousands of people when he's
Mhm.
has his hands up, singing out of the, wanting to get out of the rain. But my co-host Chris Meggs and what he has done and his love of the song, he might be the true Rain King. Chris, welcome back to the podcast.
Uh, Thank you. Well, I do have a jacket, a bunch of years ago. I want to say 2018. They produced rain jackets. The Crows did that
Oh,
say "I am the Rain King" on the back, and I get a lot of compliments on that one from people who don't know who Counting Crows are. They're just like, "That's awesome that you're just in this." Rain jacket that says "I am the Rain King,"
oh,
and
that's
I'm
pretty
like,
funny.
I
Yeah.
don't, because and I will tell you, I don't really like the rain. I'm
Okay.
not a rain person, despite loving songs about the rain. I love songs about the rain, don't like the actual rain. But I do like wearing just a bright yellow rain jacket that says "I am the Rain King" on the back.
That's
Um,
funny. Well, if you know, a good test to be a good test would be to see if you like the rain or not is to move to Southern California. And I'm not just
mm,
saying this because of the fire situation going on now, but it doesn't rain out here like
right.
ever. And so that's how I realized I do love the rain. And then when I was living in
Oh,
Ireland for a little bit, I wanted it to rain every day. I was like, this is the best. Yeah, no, I like rainy days. Reminds me of that Saturday Night Sunday Mornings album cover a little bit. Okay, so
we got to find you
yeah,
that rain jacket then. It's got to be online somewhere.
and I did wear, and I since we're talking about now, and this is the Ring King episode. I did have I worn it out, even though I guess it would only be what 4 years old. But I did buy the Ring King T-shirt that they were
Mm,
selling. I think for the Butter Miracle tours when that came out, and it has the
that's right.
the guy's face hidden with the umbrella. But I love that. I actually did get a couple compliments with that from strangers on the street, being like, "Oh, that's cool retro shirt." Like they thought I bought it being like a hipster retro person, not a big Counting Crows fan. So anyway,
Yeah.
so we're gonna go all into the Rain King. We got
Hmm.
our reviews of the live performances, or let's just say top 10. I guess you had top 12. Chris Miggs put that together just like he did with the Round Here live performances. We're going to talk about the song generally. Let's start with news and notes. And that would be, I guess, yeah. Well, Chris, you wanted to talk about the Jesse Malin shows.
Yeah. So I actually got to see Adam and Emmy 2 nights in a row at the beginning of December. They were playing as part of Jesse Malin, the New York singer songwriter's comeback shows. So Jesse had a spinal stroke in 2023. Had a really really long road to recovery. There was a benefit album that was produced that Adam and Emmy did a song on called Oshina, which is a Jesse Malin song. Um, but so for these shows, and it was actually very interesting. I sort of expected that all of the sort of guests, and there were many guests on these shows: Elvis Costello, Lucinda Williams, Butch Walker, Jacob Dylan, a whole like group of people. I sort of assumed that they were going to do stuff, and then Jesse was going to come out as the main event. But interestingly, Jesse's put on so many benefits over the years. He was always it's always kind of the funny thing of this was sort of like, Jesse's done so many benefits, and now he's sort of he's like, I'm so embarrassed to have benefits for myself. But such
Right.
a modest guy that a couple of people came out, just a couple of songs to kind of warm things up, and then he and his band came on immediately.
Oh,
And
okay.
so Jesse opened, basically was like the opener at his own comeback show. But they played for a long time. They played like a 90-minute set. Emmy, who has played in Jesse's band before, played with Jesse a lot of the night. Really just kind of having fun, ripping solos. A lot of strong Emmy content. The other guests all did one song. I sort of expected that Adam would do Oshina since it was from the record. But Jesse ended up doing it both nights. And apparently Jesse asked Adam if he would do a long December.
Hmm.
So they did that both nights. It was actually really interesting to hear a long December played by a different band. So it's Adam, it's Emmy, and it's the rest of sort of Jesse Mallin's band, which all a lot of great talented musicians, terrific band. Um, but it was really interesting to hear because the Crows have played that song
Right.
800 times or something like that, and so there's a little bit of like roteness to it. They've done it. So it was really kind of fun to hear it a little bit with a fresh angle. My favorite thing was Ad actually in they get to the guitar solo, and Adam goes, "Emmy, it's your turn finally," which is a joke for like the 12 Crows fans in the audience, right? Like no one else knows that Emmy doesn't play the solo when the band plays it,
Oh,
and that's a
right,
dance
right.
solo.
Yep, yep.
And finally, this is Emmy's turn to play the solo. But the band sounded great. Adam sounded awesome. He told a couple of great stories, actually different stories both nights, which was great. He told a story about how the Counting Crows' old sort of gear manager, um, who passed away a few years ago, Tom. Um, he had been worked for Jesse Malin for on like the band Degeneration, Jesse's band in the 90s, was a huge fan. And he's like, that's how I originally found out about the guy, because he would always tell us um that about them, and he would go work with them whenever he could, whenever he had the opportunity. Um and so he talked a little bit about that. And then also he talked about meeting Jesse, interestingly, on like the set of the Answering Bell video. Because Jesse is friends with Ryan Adams, and um there's like, yeah, there was this guy playing his new record just sitting in the back of in the back of this place, and I was like, oh, I guess I'll take a listen. And he played me TKO, and I was like, damn, this guy's this guy's pretty good. This might be going places. So yeah, it was a great fun shows. You could check out, I'm sure, the video online. If you go, actually, and I'll give a plug, my friend Wendy, if you go Dizbomb on Instagram, Dizz, I'm pretty sure she's got videos up from both nights if you want to go see some very clean video of Adam's performances. But yeah, it was nice to
And
hear a long December at the beginning of December, right? It's always just kind
oh,
of
right.
thing. I'll always take more, but for the night, it was kind of the perfect amount of all the guests and of Jesse's comeback. And Jesse was wonderful and inspiring. If you don't know the story and don't know his music, I really highly recommend, obviously, his records. Particularly the Fine Art of Self Destruction is a great sort of entry points first record. But also just go, if you go listen to the tribute record, a lot of great versions of his songs. You hear from a lot of different voices. You can hear Adam and Emmy doing one of them. He's wonderful and a great inspiration. So that was a good live
And
experience.
for those that don't know, I'll spell it. It's Jesse, Jesse, and then Malin, Malin. If so, yeah, we might have to. We're going to mention at some point. Talk about like songs that Adam has done, like not on records, or right, and that might be one of. We'll cover that particular song at some
We got to
point.
talk about it. We got to
Yeah.
talk about it.
Okay, so let's focus on the Rain King. I said this is the Rain King episode. Mostly, we're going to talk about the live performances. I would argue that, I mean, casual fans that want to that don't know, or just casual music fans or '90s music fans that go see Counting Crows. I guess when they go, they'll say, "Oh, I want to hear Mr. Jones and Long December." That's what I think they want to hear, and then maybe round here at the second choice or something like that, or third choice. But I would argue nowadays it's interesting that Rain King is almost the most, right. It's their showstopper, and it's almost the most Counting Crowsy. I don't know, song live like that now.
Yeah,
That's kind of it's become almost their theme song in a way.
I think it
Um,
kind of was always in some ways a theme song. I think that's
Maybe
one part I love about it is sort of I kind of feel like there's a lot of the. It's interesting. I was thinking about this today relative to the rest of August and everything after. Rain King is a little bit of an abstract song, right? You think about like Mr. Jones, he's down at the New Amsterdam,
right.
Amsterdam, he's staring at this yellow-haired girl, right? Um,
That's true.
in Round Here, he steps out a front door, then there's some stuff, but it's like, there's a lot of a lot of details, right?
Yeah, I would
She's
maybe this
talking in
one
her
and
sleep. It's keeping me awake.
yeah,
Whereas Rain King is a lot more abstract. Even the stuff that it does have detail is sort of vague in a lot of ways. But but think about, like, when I think of heaven, deliver me in a black-winged bird, right?
yeah,
Is an evocative image, but it's not like a thing that's happening,
right.
right? And so in that way, I think the song sort of acts a little bit, though, as kind of like a mission statement that you can pour your own energy into, right? I think a lot of people who are Counting Crows fans always say, like, oh, you got to college, turns out you're a Counting Crows fan. It's because there's a certain yearning of, like, where am I going? Who am I supposed to be with? I'm trying to find love. That sort of energy going into the world. And I feel like Rain King, for me at least, and I think for a lot of people, um, sort of represents that energy of just sort of yearning. And like Adam describes it, there's a in the storytellers thing, he talks about this book is it's based on a book, Henderson the Rain King by Saul Bellow. It's not based on a book, but it's sort of like it takes a little bit of that, at least the words,
At
right?
least named after the book. 1959, by the way, that novel was written.
And he says, like, he's like, Adam's like, the book is about someone who's just sort of like spraying himself all over the world. Like he's just sort of like just it's all kind of coming out, right? And I think again, it's evident in the song, and I think that's again, I think maybe a somewhat common personality type for a
Hmm.
Counting Crows fan. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where the song really kind of connects and I think one of the great things about it, about the fact that it's become a song where they put a lot of alternate lyrics into,
Yeah.
is that it's a song that, because it's a little bit vague and open, although has a very specific evocative image, um, it's interesting that you put all these things into it, right? And it can kind of flower in ways that other songs maybe wouldn't the same way, because the details are the details, right? And there's only so much. Like Anna Begins is like a story, right? It's very complete. And if you dropped extra lyrics into Anna Begins, I don't know how that would work and how that would feel. But Rain King, it's sort of very natural to be like, let's take this somewhere else too and see what that does. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
I love this song. I'm also say, because we were talking, I put it's like a 12 song list together, and we'll share it on YouTube. I listened to this just straight through. We were talking about the other day. I just put this on and listen. I can listen to Rain King just on a loop. Like it legitimately, it might be my favorite song in the world. Certainly it's top 5 for me of like songs. Like you could play me, especially live versions. You play me live versions of Rain King, I can listen to it. I could probably go several hours if you needed me to.
That's really funny. I put it high. Yeah, I guess you. I think you did put it number one when we did our song ranking. It might have been number two for me. No, I think you're right. I think you explained it very well, like the name of it and that stuff. I guess he did say he was part of that he felt that he was a ranking. But you're right about it's something about that when he was writing, he was trying to throw all his emotions out into the writing, the fears, the doubts, but also the good, the happiness as well. So I guess throwing all his emotions out into a song lyric helped make him feel like the Rain King. And by the way, because I kind of hinted at this already, how especially maybe like post pandemic, how powerful do you think it felt when he does that ending, I am the Rain King, like, and then the crowd's going nuts because that's usually when the crowd is the
Mhm.
loudest. And then, all of the band playing and he's just like looking up to the sky, kind of in a religious way. That must be very vindicating, I guess, and make him feel great. I'm sure he feels, I don't think he's just going through the motions there. I think he loves it.
Yeah. Oh,
Right.
and it's one of the great. Again, I think for a long time now, it's been one of the great like dramatic moments in their set too. Is that
Yeah.
um although it's also been part of what I like about the song too in that regard is that there are some songs that are meant to be like a closer or something, right? That they're sort of
Yeah.
they're there for that thing, or they're like Holiday in Spain would, I feel like, feel pretty weird in the middle of a set, because it's
Right.
kind of it's meant as sort of the slow kind of like ending. Whereas Rain King, they play it, and we'll talk about this as we go through some of the versions we're going to hear. Um, they play it in so many different ways, right? So it can be the epic closer, but it can also be the opener that's just sort of easing you in emotionally to the show, and it can be in the middle, and it can be at the beginning and the end, and it can just they've poured a lot of different things into that song over the years. Like, that's, again, it's one of the things I really
Mm.
love about it, is that it's not tied to anything. It's one, again, really, it's one of my favorite openers of theirs is the acoustic, um not the full sort of quiet acoustic, but the more sort of like band version acoustic,
Right.
version of Rain King, that they used to open with it a lot. Like, I want to say like
Mm.
2003, 2004 was a big opener for them. And occasionally they do it now. It's come very occasionally, but
Mm.
um I like it as that too. I like it as the epic, and I like it as the quiet thing, and I like it everywhere in between. And as I said, just feed me versions of Rain King all day, and I'll be happy.
So I
Um,
will. Most of the show is going to be about your selection and discussion about 12 particular live performances. I guess just last little fun facts before we get into it. Rain King was an official single, officially their third single from the album,
mm,
although the Einstein was thrown out right before this one, Einstein on a Beach. So that was right, which again didn't really have Adam's permission to be released as a single. But
right.
strangely
Well, and that's where
enough,
there's the weird history too with this song, and that it's a single, and so there's more people know it, I think, because it was a single in some ways. But this is the song where Adam had said, I think, because of the way Einstein was blowing up and stuff, he was like, no, no, he put the break. Like, there's no video for this
right?
song.
That's what I was about to say. So because it would have been a much bigger hit if they had a video. There is no doubt about it. Uh, yeah, and was that the also the I don't remember if it was Rain King or Mr. Jones that maybe even the record company wanted it released as the first single. I don't remember. Maybe originally they wanted to, and he said, "Oh, maybe later or something." And
Yeah.
then,
No,
as you
yeah, I
said,
think Rain King, yeah, I think Rain King was the one they wanted to lead with. Um
and then as you said, because of the Einstein, then because that's kind of a poppy song, and Rain King, I guess you could call it somewhat poppy to compare to the rest of the album. But you're right, and so it did chart on the mainstream rock. So it was one of the highest ever on the mainstream rock charts. It reached number 4, which is higher than Round Here made, which was number 11. Mr. Jones got up to number 2. As far as the U.S. radio songs, it did, probably because it did not have a video, did not crack the top 40, where Mr. Jones and Round Here did. In fact, Einstein got up to number 45, which is amazing since you know it was totally unofficial, and yeah, all that kind of stuff. Do you remember
yeah.
hearing Einstein on the radio? Actually, I do
I
not.
don't. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't recall. Yeah, it doesn't ring a bell for
Yeah,
me
it said
hearing
on
that on
the
the radio.
U.S. the alternate rain play. Anyway, we'll talk about Einstein some other time. So anyway, that's where yeah, so that's where we are with Rain King, and a little backstory there. I do remember hearing it on the radio a bit. I remember, yeah. The last thing I'm going to say, I think I even mentioned this once before. I worked at like a real blue collar place the one summer. I guess it was the summer of '94. I guess that makes sense. Yeah, and Rain King came on the radio, and some guy who I think his favorite band was Pavement or something. He said something to me like, "You probably like this stupid Rain King song or whatever," because to him it was too soft. And I was like, "Yeah, I do like this song," and he might have threatened to beat me up or something. So let's go into
Well,
the top. Yeah,
and I'll
please.
caveat, I would not say that the versions on this are necessarily the top 12 best versions.
Okay.
Um what I did here, this is a representative sampling, um also of what's on YouTube, right? The goal here
Oh,
is,
right.
what's on YouTube, because I think this is the easiest way to share stuff. And also video, right? I like seeing video, like seeing Adam do it, so there's not video of every great version of Rain King. And so what I've tried to do here is kind of cover, and I think I have covered all of the major sort of big alts, right? Interestingly, a little bit relative to Round Here, where Adam tends to go off in a sort of more different directions. Rain King, there's sort of a group of alts. There are times where Adam goes off in kind of
Right.
his own direction. We'll get to one of them later in this. But a lot of times those are kind of shorter and a little more tossed off. And there's been a lot in Rain King of a sort of a group of sort of songs and alts that are, they think, the traditional ones. So I've wanted to make sure we covered the full range of that, and that's what we've done here. And so sort of an opportunity to talk about um, each of the big ones at least, and talk about what we like about them and what we connect to, maybe what we don't like in certain circumstances.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
please listen along or watch one video and then come back to our commentary or etc. So the first one you chose, first one on the list, I think is, well, there might have been another. I think only two of them. The first two are pre 2000, if I
right.
look correctly. So this one is 1994. Uploaded by Barely Out of the Tuesday, who we've talked about before. A lot of these are who has the best YouTube Counting Crows kind of off the beaten path, uploads in a lot of ways. From what's it called, the Adam the Untouchable boot. That's what
Yes,
some people called it, which I don't know much about that particular boot. Maybe you can add a little bit about that. But yeah, please talk
it's just a
about.
show for Europe that just happened to be called that.
Oh, so it was a European show. Okay, that one I wasn't. Some of these I looked at where they were from, but so please talk about. I have some stuff, but please talk about this.
Sure. So this is just sort of sort of the sort of palette setter, I'd say. This is what the song sounded like pretty much with them playing it in 1994, right? Kind of coming out of the gate. There's no alt in this one. What's kind of always interesting about the 94 version of anything is that Adam kind of sings it differently every night. And so there's always kind of interesting, kind of subtle things. It's always interesting listening to a 94 tape because they're just, um, I, again, every night, Adam, his whole ethos at that point is like, I'm going to pour myself into these songs differently every night. But at the same time, this is just sort of the baseline, right? They've already veered a little bit from the original arrangement. It's not exactly the album version, but they haven't gotten all the way out there yet in the way that they're going to over the years. This is just sort of there as the baseline to remember, also to help you remember. There's a great Adam story where when Rob Thomas was on tour with them, he came out, and when they were doing Rain King in the encore, he would sing a little bit with them, and he sang the bridge part. I only want the same as anyone. Henderson's rating for the sun, and Adam was like, Rob, wow, like the melody you put on that's so good. Like, man, just great job, man. And he's like, where'd you think of that? And Rob Thomas is like, I just sang the one on the record. I listened to the melody on the record and then I sang it. And Adam was like, oh, I hadn't heard it in so long. I thought you'd come up with a brilliant invention of how to sing this melody, and I apparently just had forgotten what I'd done. And he's like, I'm going to try to start singing it more like that. And he did afterwards. But he had just, there's so much evolution of this song that he literally was stunned into hear it by hearing the original version, that he thought he had forgotten that he was the writer of that melody.
All right.
So, so yeah, it's interesting to hear again, just as this is the sort of the baseline of like, let's start here and then we'll go.
Yeah, and by the way, when you're saying it right, because this is, I mean, Wikipedia is generally pretty accurate, but if you go to the ranking entry, it lists the entire band, that the five main or the five original band members as the songwriters, but I do not think that's true. If you go to the liner notes, and I think some other notes we have, Rain King actually was written by just Adam and Bryson. As we know, Bryson was involved in a lot of the music back then, of writing the music, and of course the words were all Adam. So the only thing I had about this one is, I said this one I thought out of all the ones you picked was the most mid-tempo-y. Yeah, it wasn't too fast or too acoustic. And then I'm not a diehard fan of Adam's like no, I mean it's good, but Adam at this time period was what I call a little mopey sometimes when he was singing a lot of these songs. So a little bit, especially compared to what he does now. But yeah, being a bass line, it also had no ending. Like, you know what I mean? It didn't have
Right.
coming out from the rain. It just said, "I am the Rain King," and then it ended. Um, by the way, I don't know. I wonder if Adam ever did. I mean, one thing that we've hinted about, has Adam ever live, and you've listened to much more live than me, actually end Rain King with that yell that he does on the recorded version that casual fans think he's going to do live in concert, but he's not going to do?
Oh,
Yeah.
I actually, if it was very early. I'd be curious to go back to maybe like the earliest like taped versions that we have and to see if he
Yeah.
does it. Because you're right. I mean, not really.
Yeah, I don't think, and that's what I was almost expecting. That's why I noted that, because I was like, oh, maybe he will, because it's a pretty early version. So we'll see. Maybe sometime if you go back to whatever 93 or something,
Yeah.
see if it. Okay, next one is, and I guess this is. I think you picked two things from Amsterdam throughout the 12 at different
Mm.
times.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. Two of them.
so this Amsterdam one is something that gosh, you know what? I think I heard of this once and totally forgot about it. But this is from something called and you can explain it, the 2 meter sessions,
Hmm.
1997 Amsterdam. You might even have talked about this in the Amsterdam episode we had earlier in our podcast.
We might have a little bit.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so please
Um,
talk about this.
yeah. So the 2 meter sessions is a Dutch music television program. That the Crows played in '97, then again in it's either '99 or 2000. I actually can't remember which, but on the This Desert Life tour. This is really cool. It's sort of a kind of a companion to Storytellers because they're all of the songs on that version of the in the '97 are the acoustic versions. They play basically it's basically like the Storytellers versions, with the exception of Adam plays a solo Long December version at the very end, which is also very cool.
Mm.
This used to be on like the Amazon. Amazon had like I
Yes,
can't
I
even think of the
saw
name of it.
that.
Oh,
Yes.
it's maybe it's still
I mean,
there.
no, I mean, I saw that before, like a couple of years ago. I remember seeing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole thing used to be up there on like this Amazon music streaming service that I'm not sure exists anymore. Voodoo, maybe? Is that a thing?
Okay.
Maybe I'm right. Maybe I forget it. Maybe
Yeah, I
I'm
think it
totally
was
making that up.
Amazon, but yeah.
It was something with Amazon.
Yeah.
Um and but it's not up there now. Well, maybe it's up there now. Someone can double check me on that. I'm sorry. I wish I had better information for you. That's the level of prep. I built a whole list for this. I didn't do other research for this. Um But so I think this is sort of again the baseline in the sense of an acoustic version, right? Um this is them kind of doing that full acoustic rearrangement. And they played this acoustic on like the August tour, like radio stations and things like that. But this is them doing really a full proper acoustic arrangement. You also start to see the beginnings of alts. There's a middle thing about, what's wrong with me,
Mm.
which again, if again
Oh, I
as a
wrote that. Yeah, I
yeah,
wrote that.
if you're a Counting Crows, talk about ethos of Counting Crows fans, going, what's wrong with me? Probably
Very,
up there.
very, yeah. Especially in Gen X, right? That almost is. I know. Yeah, right. That's almost
Yeah,
a joke about it too. Yeah.
and there's also an ending line which they used a lot, actually, also on the August tour. But "Good night, Elizabeth. I'm so sorry now."
Yep.
Which again, obviously, these two songs, "Good night, Elizabeth," specifically references being the Rain King. They're always sort of linked. Um, I always kind of like hearing them the explicit references between them. We'll get to a version later that has an even more explicit sort of use of the Elizabeth lyrics. But yeah, so again, that's more just here. Again, we're sort of set in baseline still. I just think it's a really beautiful version. And again, if you haven't heard the whole 2 meter sessions, that's one I'd really recommend seeking out because it's just really nice. It's a
Yeah, you're right. By the way,
nice 20 minutes.
it said that it's not on. It said they did have the 40 minute version on Amazon Prime, and it said the rights are expired.
Gotcha. Okay.
So maybe at some point they'll be back, at least in the U.S. Maybe some VPN you can get somewhere else, but that's what it said here. Okay, yeah, I had that. I said acoustic, same. Yeah, you basically had the same things as me. It's kind of fun now. I mean, even though I sometimes get sad about us all getting older, and we're always changing, as Adam would say.
Mhm.
But it's kind of fun to go back sometimes and see like video of them at that point, right? It's just how people change, and even I guess because this reminded me of the VH1, and
Mm.
the VH1 video is not readily available, right?
Mhm.
That this allowed me to kind of live through the VH1 one without it being VH1.
Right.
I kind of got a kick out of Ben with the big drum in the back, like almost, the big drum that they would use, in a big marching band or something, and just touching it, and then touching the cymbal very lightly. And
Mhm.
I always kind of like when they show people doing their background vocals at certain points too,
Mhm.
Charlie and Dan doing them and focusing on that. So yeah, I really so thanks. This was a nice one to look at,
Yeah.
especially if you like the VH1 ish acoustic version.
Yeah, it's really beautifully shot, that the 2 meter section. And it's weird, the 99 version, whatever however they've laid out the studio for that is actually, I actually kind of visually kind of odd. The 97 2 meter sessions, it's a beautiful shoot. It's really like a perfect capture of like the band in that era.
Yeah.
Just it's just well shot. It's great.
Yeah, I still laugh at any time now I see Dan without a hat, right? Because now, I mean, he's been wearing a hat for 20 years probably, so this might have been right
Pretty
before
much.
he
Yeah.
started wearing a hat every time. Okay, number 3. This is which I don't know. You could tell me. I almost think you were at this one, but you could tell me
I
if I'm wrong.
was.
See, I knew it. See, I kind of know you better than or in my subconscious. So this was live from Town Hall.
Mhm.
The someone wrote incorrectly on YouTube. This has to do with the re-release, right, of August and everything
Yep.
after the live version, but I think it was a 15th anniversary. About somebody put 10th, which is not true, right? Because
Right. It would have been I don't think they
I guess
released it on a year. It was
14.
the 14th. It was when they released the
Yeah,
deluxe edition of
right.
the album. They did that show, which then became the Live at August and Everything After Live at Town Hall DVD, which we'll talk about that DVD at some point in great detail, right? It's a live release, and we'll
Yeah, that's
go
partly
into.
why I did some of these. I didn't have as many comments, partly because I know we'll probably cover it at some point on other things. But please, your memories going there, and what makes this one stand out. Hint, yeah, I think Bruce has something to do with it.
Yeah. Well, and so and just again from the ordering perspective, 'cause we did round here, I did everything just kind of in date order. And what I kind of decided to do here was to go again more in alt order than date order, because the first big alt, the one that is become sort of really kind of famous among Crows fans in Rain King, is Thunder Road, right? It's the Bruce Springsteen
Right, and we
song.
talked about this with the Face the Promised Land, right? Because he did that there, I think.
Right. It's
Yeah.
he'd done that's when they started doing it. They returned to it sometimes, and it's interesting, this one they hadn't done it in a long time right before they did this. But when they decided to do Adam told a story, they decided when they were going to decide to do all of August for this show at Town Hall, they decided they should do Rain King Electric,
Hmm.
and then they realized that Millard had never played Rain King Electric since he joined the band. So
Yeah.
he had to learn it. And I guess in part of like going back and doing that, that's kind of sparked Adam into Thunder Road for the first time in a long time. That's what they did a couple of times leading up to this show and then at Town Hall. Um, I've always, this is not my favorite one. I will talk about which ones are my absolute favorites. I have always thought this is really works. And I had never really realized why. And it was maybe I talked a little bit about during the Face the Promised Land episode, but I think Thunder Road and Rain King have this very similar sort of narrator driven thing that's happening.
Plus, you get
Where,
the thunder and rain reference, or thunder and
well,
rain
that's,
connection. It could be right.
honestly, I was going to go on a 3 sentence thing, and that's probably the right answer is just rain and
No,
thunder.
but I agree with you. I think you mentioned this before about the narrative. I never put
Yeah.
it together either, but yeah, please.
Yeah,
Talk
no, just like yeah, that he's the whole Rain King is like a sort of a pleading. He's talking to a person, um, if anyone's home at your place, darling, please invite me in. And Thunder Road, it's almost like he's like, I don't really care if she's home or not. I'm going to go to the house, or maybe he goes
Mm.
and he finds her there. I don't know. But because the lyrics of Thunder Road are like, Don't run back inside, darling. You know just what I'm here for. You're scared. You know, he's trying to convince her to like take off into the world with him, which is also that's actually also interesting. It's kind of that's become kind of a recurring theme for Adam in Round Here, right? Come outside.
Mm.
And a lot of the stuff over the last couple of years where basically like go run away with me, like we don't have time. Like a lot of those lyrics, if you sort of they're original Adam lyrics in all those versions, but they are like analogous to Round Here in a lot to Thunder Road, right? The sort of come on, take off, heaven's waiting down on the tracks. You know, we're riding out tonight to case the promised land and all that stuff. But yeah, and I also again part of it's I just like the way the band plays this. I think the band plays it
Well,
great, and I think
this almost reminds me of this. I almost think that this was the early version of what we get now. Like you can see, you know what I mean? Like this is kind of the first chapter of the modern one that they play. Um, yeah, no, I like it. It doesn't even I said I like the one of the reasons I don't love all the round here ones alts is because I think for a song that's already kind of long, sometimes it can make it drag depending
mm,
on how long he goes. And again, part of this is memory. He used to I think do longer alts, 20 years ago. But I think this one even though there's some slow parts in it, it does not drag. At least for me, I thought it just flowed. And you're right. I think there's reasons that they choose Thunder Road, and not just because of the town full of losers. I one thing I realized there's two things I realized. Of course, I, the camera focused on anything where the camera can focus on Charlie and certain
mm,
points of what he adds. I think a lot of times now, of course, now I have trained my ears, but a lot of times I think we don't realize how much Charlie adds unless the camera focuses on him, and you're like, that's that
mm.
little part or sound effect, or he's doing this there. Um, but one thing I'll have to really compliment Adam about, I know that he talked about, there were certain parts, I guess, around or certain times, maybe like Saturday night, Sunday mornings around that time when I don't know if it was because of issues with the pharmaceuticals he was taking or something that he's like, oh, I didn't put the best effort in, or there's certain times that we weren't the great. But in general, one thing I really like about it because I think you can't be 100 out of 100 every night, and I think he
Mm.
tries a lot of times, like with his voice, to really put a big effort. And I'm like, geez, he just did this 4 out of the last 5 days or something. But when he knows he's being recorded, I think he puts like he really is great at that. He puts his
Yeah,
100%. He knows the showmanship, and anyway, I just thought that this was a perfect example of that.
yeah.
So
Yeah, no, and that whole performance, we'll talk again. We'll talk at great length about that one, I'm sure, at some point. But that's a great show,
yeah,
and part of that is I think Adam at that point is kind of coming out of that difficult period,
yeah,
and he's fit and he's ready to go, and he's like
yeah.
fired up. I really feel like 2007, 2008 are some of the best shows I ever saw the band play, and I think
Yeah, I think
he's
you're
just
right.
in that space, and a lot of it is just his like he's going and yeah that's why I really there's a lot of great 99 2000 versions of this with Thunder Road, but man they really crush it pretty hard on this version.
Now let's see if I still know you well, like I knew you
Mm-hmm.
were at that. But that must have been so fun. Well, again, we'll talk about that when we do the show. Okay, so I'm guessing this is one of your top two or three, maybe even number one, because this is from One on One 2015, and it has Raining in Baltimore in the middle. And I know you like Raining in Baltimore, so please, do you want to talk about? And I don't know
Yeah,
what the One on One is. Is who
so one on
sponsored
one
this?
is Ehud Lazen, the their who's become really like their videographer. That's his
Oh, their
this
photographer and videographer,
Yeah,
right?
this is just a concert they played in Long Island at the Paramount in Huntington. This
Okay.
is another one I was at, and actually, I realized and watched. I hadn't watched this video in a while. I realized in the right corner of the screen, you can see me in the sort of
Oh,
like far side front row. The first time, I'm just sort of like locked in. I'm just really locked in thought, and then later, there's a part where like you can I feel like you can see my wife saying something to me, and I feel like it's something to the effect of, "Are you okay?"
That's
And I'm
funny.
like, it's fine. It's just I love this. Um, but yeah, so this is round here, Rain King with Raining in Baltimore, which is I would say this is probably my number two. We'll get to
Okay.
what my number one is. But we talked about it a bunch in Raining in Baltimore, but I love these two songs together. I think the combination of the images, they're obviously both songs about rain, yes, but I just think they just work perfectly. They're like, peanut butter and jelly in terms of how they just like fit together and make this beautiful thing. I also really like this arrangement. It's a sort of I call it like sort of the electric acoustic version, right?
That's
Some
funny.
of the guys are
I
playing
called
it.
it modern acoustic. Now some people in the comments don't like it, whatever. But yeah,
Mm,
I agree. Yeah.
yeah, it's sort of it still has the swells in it that the electric version has, but it's got that kind of more laid back aspect to it. Um, you know, I just again I think the emotional resonance of these two together has just always worked for me. It's always it's part of it maybe error wise in that this was the thing they played most in Rain King when I was starting to go to shows and listening to bootlegs. In fact, the first time I went to see the band, this was the first song. Was they opened with Rain King with Raining in Baltimore in the
Hmm.
middle. And again, to the point of everyone's different tastes and whatnot, my dear friend who was sitting next to me was also a fan of the band and not a hater or anything like that. When they went back into Rain King, he was like, "Are they still playing Rain King? Like I thought we were
Right. You thought you
down
moved
the line,
on.
but we're still in Rain King." And I'm like, "Oh, of course, Adam." Actually, that guy's also named Adam. But I'm like, of course, Adam. This is come on, man. This is Rain King and Raining in Baltimore together. Um, but yeah, I've this is to me again I love this and there's so many great versions. Again, I'm not saying this is like the definitive version of that. It's just really well shot and really nice. And again, if you want to see me emotionally react to Rain King and Raining in Baltimore, this is your
Go,
opportunity
go
in
look
the
for
far
you
right
in the.
corner.
You'll have to point it
i'm
out to
I'm
me.
not I
When
didn't have a beard yet though. It's a
oh,
little bit
okay.
trickier because you've got to know what I look like without a beard or be able to imagine what I looked like without a beard.
Right. Okay. Sounds lit. Yeah, I put two that they weren't that long, but there's some like little mini solos in the middle.
Mm,
I think it's right, might be before the Elizabeth part, but anyway, Charlie like has I thought a great little solo, and then it goes to like Emmy doing a little part, and then of course Dan does some of the guitar when I want to hear a little guitar, right? And
yeah,
for the Raining in Baltimore part. Yeah, I'm guessing we don't see this much anymore because Rain King is their showstopper nowadays. And but anyway, yeah, no, I
yeah,
thought that was yeah. I know. I'd
yeah,
love to hear them do a real Raining in both, with him and
yeah.
but this is pretty decent. So yeah,
Yeah, it's right. This is kind of towards the end. Maybe it's like a year or two after that, where they kind of went towards. I think it's after that Rob Thomas thing, where they went back towards like, yeah, we're going to use Rain King in the encore, and we're going to do like more of a harder hitting version of it, either in the
right
encore or towards the end of the main
towards
set,
the end,
which
yeah,
they've
right
used a lot
before
too.
the encore, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly,
and so I think there's something to that. I would obviously love to see them play a longer Rain King, but I do think again, if he also, I always say, if Adam's not feeling it, if Adam doesn't have
yeah,
a bunch of stuff in the middle to say, then it is what it is. Like, I
it
don't,
is, yeah,
it's no good when he's forcing it either. So,
that's true.
yeah, but
Okay, so let's then go to number 5. This is also from Amsterdam. Also 2000. This is 2003. I think there's a couple from 2003 for whatever reason around that time.
yeah.
This is Rain King with the Oh Susanna, Oh Susanna in the middle. And this I do want to make a note before you get into you
Hmm.
that this time remember is like the time that I think is in some ways one of the more interesting, where that it
Hmm.
had Jim and Matt
Hmm.
Mally in it, that short period of time that they overlapped. And Jim kind of cracks me up back then because again, he's clearly younger than everybody else, right?
Yeah.
He looks like a young little hotshot with his like bleached hair, right? I think he has like bleached blonde, if I remember correctly, hair.
Yes. Yes.
Emmy probably looks the most different. I mean, Jim just looks like a younger version of himself. Matt is playing right like there's some bass, I think, in the front where he kind of. Anyway, I'm just saying Matt kind of stand. Oh no, sorry. My point was that I thought out of the versions, Matt's bass playing stood out a little bit. I thought
Mm.
he added some extra little things. But anyway, those are my notes. So let's go to. And I don't love Oh Susanna, but I thought it was actually great here.
Yeah, I mean
Um,
they do a good
yeah.
version with that, but that's
Yes.
my big thing with O Susanna is like
Yeah.
I've never figured out what the hell that has to do with Rain King.
Right.
Um I love the I welcome anyone else's opinion who's listening. Write us, tell us what on earth the connection between O Susanna and Rain King is.
Yeah.
Um, I guess maybe the guy in Rain King is the one who has come from Alabama with a banjo on his knee. I guess there's a seeking aspect of Rain King you could sort of connect the two, but
Oh, I
it
thought.
has rained
Yeah.
all night the day he left. It rained all
Yep.
night the day he left. Now the weather it was dry, so I guess there's a literal connection there. I've just always when they go into that, I'm just like, oh man,
I thought,
just not for
but
me.
I wrote that when they started doing the O Susanna part, that I thought it was going to be more guitar based, but it was piano based, and I thought that was an excellent choice.
Yeah, no,
Like
it's
it
the
wouldn't.
arrangement is cool.
Yeah,
Agreed.
the arrangement is really, 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 really good. I don't know who makes all these little micro decisions, but it sounds great. But anyway, any other thoughts
I
on that
think
one?
that's kind of it's, and that's actually again, it's one of my favorite things about this song as it's evolved over the years is that all of these versions are kind of different,
Yeah.
right? In terms of, yeah, you could say you could break them into like acoustic and electric, but there's a lot of different stuff happening in them. I think it's kind of a combination of Adam and the band.
Mm.
To me, it's always like the band is throwing ideas out, and Adam's kind of always the one to catch them and be like, yes, more of that. And so I think it's that kind of group mind um that they play with. This is, by the way, this is from Amsterdam in 2003. This is definitely from the same run of shows as the new Amsterdam uh
Live
show, that
one.
live thing.
Oh,
I
okay.
think this might be the version on it. I can't 100% remember. I think it's an O Susanna that's on
Yeah, I
that
can't remember
version. So I
either.
think that's it. But we'll again, that's another one we'll get to. We'll talk about those shows in great detail
Yep.
when we get to the that tape.
Yep.
Um
Okay, so number six, then we'll be halfway through. Another 2003. This is from Rolling Stone Studios, acoustic, and it's just Adam, Dan, and Emmy, if I'm pretty
and
sure.
Charlie.
Oh, Charlie is in this one.
Charlie's sort of in the
Okay,
background somewhere tinkling on piano. I don't think he's very
okay,
visible, but
okay. So please, any comments on this one?
I have many comments. Okay, so
Oh,
this is I put it in the middle just because it kind of made sense as we were going through here. This is so. Uh, Let me. I love this. Let's just start with it. I love this, and I'm going to count the ways. So the first thing is that I love the arrangement of just Adam, Emmy, Dan, Charlie. It's a beautiful, so still and so perfect. I love that. That's a really they just bring a lot out of like textures. I've always liked that version of the band comes up very occasionally. It's like the Outlaw Road shows, they've did those. Sometimes, when they be doing like um radio sessions, and this is for rollingstone.com. Um that's what this is for. It's
hmm.
I really they really complement and find a lot of interesting, beautiful ways through those songs. And of the songs they tended to play in that arrangement, Rain King's probably my favorite. So these versions really stick out. So this is one of my I love the arrangement of it. Also, Someone to Watch Over Me is we buried the lead, but that is my favorite Rain King alt. I think
Right.
the
Okay.
lyrics to Someone to Watch Over Me, Gershwin's song, are just in terms of things that connect up, at least for me, the way I emotionally view that song and the way that links up. Um, I'm a little lamb lost in the woods. I know I could always good for someone to watch over me. I know I may not be the girls. I may not be the man some girls think of as handsome, but to my heart, she carries the key. That's again, if that's like the ethos of Rain King and the sort of the perspective of the person singing that song, Adam or some version of Adam or whatever. That one's perfect to me. I think that's my all time favorite. I actually used to have a this T-shirt that I got done on Spreadshirt back in the day when you could just kind of like make shirts. It was like Rain King on the front and like varsity letters, but then the lyrics to Someone to Watch Over Me on the back with a pic. I've always wanted, if anyone out there, I'm going to put this out there. I'm going to put this out there. If anyone out there really enjoys graphic design and wants to design a Rain King shirt with me that really captures Adam's hands in the air, um, and I promise, if anyone's listening from the band's management, I will not sell these. If we do anything with them, it'll be for charity, or I'll just give them away. But I've always had this idea, and I've never really been able to execute it. But it comes from, again, like him reaching up through this song. I've just always, again, there's a, so yeah, this is to me. I know I said earlier that this is not necessarily my favorite versions. This is actually maybe my favorite Rain King ever. Full stop. There was a brief period where it wasn't on YouTube for some copyright reason, probably, and someone re-uploaded and it stayed. And thank God. Go watch it now. If you only if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't know, if you only watch one, watch this on my recommendation.
Well, you should almost have the one recommendation for, like, this is the acoustic, right? And you should almost have one recommendation for the electric one as well. So you might have to think about that.
That's
So
a good
think about
question.
that.
Yeah, I'll
You
think
know what I
about
mean?
that.
If someone doesn't like the slower one and they want to watch one, then maybe, yeah.
I also,
Okay.
in terms of visuals, I always love here that Adam has, like, he's wearing a Cal hoodie
Yeah, he's wearing
and
a hoodie, which
he's got
cracks
the
me up.
pineapple dreads and he's got the hoodie
Yep.
all the way up over the pineapple dreads and he's not feeling it. It's interesting because there's around the same time, it might even be the same day potentially because it's like the same songs. There's a VH1 session um where they play the same songs, but Adam, I think, he doesn't seem quite as like pulled up. So I don't know what's happened between those two sessions.
Oh, that's funny.
But because it looks like it's the same day. I don't know. Anyway, it's certainly like the same songs and the same arrangements. That Rain King is very good too, but this Rain King is perfect. Go watch it. All right. So now that I've poured my heart out to you, Eric, what did you think of this version?
I don't know. Yeah, that was a tough. Well, as I told Chris offline, I said I listened to these. I think yesterday I listened to 8 back to back to back to back to back. Yeah, this one reminded. I told Chris. I said I think they did a similar one. This, I guess, was not as surprising. They did a similar one on Howard Stern around
Mm-hmm.
that time. I think that might even be on YouTube, or it was at one point.
Probably
I'm
is. I
not
think it definitely was at some point. Yeah, yeah.
at some point. So it kind of reminded me of that, and I liked it. Yeah. So I don't want to make a strong opinion. I guess in general, I mean, I love the storytellers. I said I like that. Some of the mid tempo stuff. In general, I tend to prefer the electric versions of Rain King, where
Mm.
everybody. Because I guess they don't have, especially nowadays, they don't have as many songs that like gets the crowd hyped up,
Hmm.
and I'd love to see the whole band into it, you know.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a more of a band song, right? Where like Long December is really an Adam song, and
Mm.
there's other, but there are some songs that I think, right, the whole band plays a starring role, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and
And
this is obviously also, I mean, as I said, like, I think one of the beautiful things about the song is that such a wide spectrum, and this is the quietest version of Rain King in the bunch that we listen to, and
yes,
this is very very quiet, and so yeah, there's those middle grounds where they did more of the band acoustic versions that
yeah,
have a little bit more lift to them, and obviously they've got the kind of heavy rocker versions. So yeah, if you're feeling like I wasn't really in the mood for something like that quiet,
yeah,
it's a it's definitely a mood piece. Like I don't listen to this like every day, but it's if
yeah.
you're feeling that sort of quiet mood, this sort of hits that spot. But yeah, it's a vibe.
And I
It's a
do
vibe.
agree with you about the lyrics that come and wash over. Wash over. I do think that those are the good choices. I guess I like Thunder Road a little better, but I also appreciate, those alts. Okay. So some more to go. Now, some of these, not all of them, a couple of these are available on other sources we'll get to. But this one, I'm not saying it's my favorite, but this was definitely, I think, the most interesting one. The next one,
Yeah.
with Augustana,
Augustana,
and
yeah.
2009 Cincinnati. This was somebody just taping,
Hmm.
from their phone, I guess. And then Augustana sang the first verse, right?
Well, they sing an old song called "Raise a Ruckus" as
Okay.
an intro. To your point, there's a lot going on in this one.
Yeah, there's a lot.
There's a lot of stuff
Exactly.
happening.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Please talk. I have
Oh
some notes,
yeah,
but
but so
please talk
so
about it. Yeah.
this is basically this was kind of Rain King. Call it from like the end of the 2008 tour when Augustana was kind of helping out. Remember, I think we talked a little bit about this. Oh, we talked about it with Dan Eisenberg, right?
Yeah.
Because he had come on the tour because Charlie and Dave had both left the tour to have babies, and or for their wives to have babies. But so Augustana was helping them out a lot, and that's where this version started to evolve. And then 2009, 2010, when they were doing the traveling circus and medicine show, this was basically the Rain King version. It was always in the encore. Um, and there's just a lot happening here. They play the Augustana does a vocal like a cappella thing called Raise a Ruckus at the top. They click into Rain King. Um, what's really notable here, I actually think more than the other stuff I'm going to talk about, is that this is where the band finds the dropouts in the chorus that they still use to this day. You know, it's like
Oh.
I belong and
Oh,
like just drop out
right.
up in the survey, like
I
where
was
where it
always
really kind
wondering when they added that because I didn't see them for a number of years, and
of.
then yeah, all of a sudden I noticed that was in it. Yeah.
It's here, which I think is one of the best in terms of like the figuring out of the arrangement of that song and the evolution of it. I also, especially in terms of what you're talking about, like this becoming like the epic show stopping closer,
Yeah.
the dropouts are what does it, right? The
Right.
original chorus works fine, but the way they do that with the dropouts really kind of brings there's something about it that's perfect and kind of brings the energy up. It gets the crowd singing more, I think, because it's
Yeah.
gotten quieter, but it,
Yeah.
it never loses the energy. But it's around here where they pick that up. Then in the middle, in the alt section, they wheel a piano out, like the Long December piano out
Yeah.
in front of Adam. They play the Beatles with a little help from my friends. And then
That's
they
funny
play
because not only did it have the "Get By with a Little Help from My Friends," which I don't know if they ever played outside of that tour, but what caught my attention too was Adam on the piano. Yeah.
yeah, they literally just wheel the piano out for him. And then they did a thing that's related to it's not all of Goodnight Elizabeth. They basically it's like a sort of a sped up version, but it's he starts singing the lyrics of Goodnight Elizabeth, but then he segues into this thing that's from this, which is um you can measure the love you lose against the songs you gain, but this is just another song about the rain.
Hmm.
And it's there's a lot of stuff like that, like you Elizabeth, and basically like these things you lose, you try to do these things, but at the end of the day, this is just a song about the rain, right? And it's that I think is one of the it's like such a beautiful thing. A because again, I think Goodnight Elizabeth is also one of my favorite songs,
Mm.
and I think the intersection of those two songs always works. But that idea of like on the one hand, this art is very meaningful and it means a lot to us. If you're a big Counting Crows fan, you've traveled to see them, you see them multiple times. Like means a lot, but also this is just a song about the rain, right? You can get a lot from this, but it's just a song. And so that feeling of like that young Adam who's seeking and wants to be an artist and who's spraying himself all over and being this kind of difficult person who maybe that girl on the other end is like, you know, yeah, I get what you're going, but I don't know if I want to deal with this. He lost her presumably in this song because he's not dating married to anyone from 1993.
Right.
So you measure the love you lose against the songs you gain, but it's just a song about the rain. Um so I really like the versions with Augustana. This is towards the top for me.
Okay.
Um I think there's kind of a fun energy to it. But yeah, it's definitely they're throwing a lot at it. There's also versions from that 2008 tour where they also drop some Mr. Jones lyrics
Hmm.
in the middle of it. So there's just and we'll talk about Mr. Jones again in a minute, but it's a big version. It's worth seeking out. If you
Oh,
weren't around in this era, it's worth seeing at least one of those.
yeah. I definitely did not see this. What was this? 2003. We said.
2009 basically, so it's late 2008, 2009, 2010 are these
Okay.
versions,
But
and then they
yeah,
never really did them after.
Yep. Okay. Good. Yeah. Did not see it. No, as I said, it's one of the most interesting. Definitely worth watching. It's fun. It's definitely fun for a big Crows fan. Okay. Five more to go. Now the next one. I don't have too many comments. We might cover this album, but this is you highlighted their version from the Echoes of the Outlaw Roadshow CD that those were recorded in 2012 and
Mhm.
released in 2013.
I think I was there for this one because I think this was the first time. I think they only did this alt at the end of the tour. I think maybe again, unless was a version from a few days before where I never heard the tape or no one noted it to me or something. Um, but because I know I was there on that tour towards the end to see them play this. This version has a song called "Lippy Kids" by the band Elbow. Elbow was sort of in that same group of um, English bands as Coldplay. Um, and this is kind
Oh,
of a cool. This is an interesting one. It's not like my favorite in terms of that. I really kind of like what they do with the arrangement here. If you've heard, you may have heard this and not realized this as I'm talking about it, because they never actually say the words "lippy kids." What they say, what Adam says a bunch is "build a rocket, boys." Um, and that I kind of just like how Adam sings that. I kind of like how this one sounds. It's not my favorite, but it's a cool one, and it's one they did a bunch in 2012, 13, 14. So people may have
yeah.
heard this one.
It's funny, the one that you linked, which has no video, but there's a couple YouTube comments, and they mentioned a lip. I mean, I would have had no idea, but they mentioned Lippy Kids, and then someone says there's actually the one part of the Lippy Kids lyrics is they mention crows.
Yes, settling. Lippy kids on the corner tonight. Lippy kids
Yeah,
on the corner
begin
in
settling
flight,
like crows.
settling like crows. Yeah.
So that must be. So that's kind
Oh,
of
so they do
funny.
say Lippy kids in the middle, but you don't remember if you hear that for the first time when you're not
Yeah.
intently listening. You don't remember Lippy kids. You remember Build a Rocket Boys, which
Right.
Adam sort of like triumphantly says.
Yeah, and then he has of course like right. There's a rocket ship reference to All My Friends, right? So
Hmm.
another rocket reference. Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So that takes us to we are up to number 9, 4 more to go. So this is from something in 2009
Mhm.
called the Biz Session.
Yeah, this is
Um
something from the UK when they were on like a UK tour promoting Saturday nights and Sunday mornings.
And this is
Um,
why I didn't think, and again, maybe I just missed it. That one that you love from Rolling Stone. Again, I didn't see Charlie in it, and for some reason, I'd have to listen. I didn't think Charlie, but definitely this one has
mm,
Charlie. Charlie's. They show the four, right? Dan, Emmy, Charlie, and Adam.
yeah,
All four of them playing. Yeah.
and this one is notable. This has a very cool alt. So this again, this sort of very stripped down acoustic version. Um, but this has Mr. Jones and Murder of One as alts. Um, and it's pretty interesting. I like the way Adam sings in the way he sings in this context. She's suddenly beautiful. Like the way he sings
Yeah.
it in the context of this is pretty good. I like this a lot. This is one they had done less. They did, as I mentioned, they'd used Mr. Jones a little bit in 2008 in Rain King, um, but less common. And this is kind of an interesting kind of one off version from a radio session that's
Well,
worth
this is definitely
hearing.
one that people. The cool thing about this one is it's one that most even hardcore Crows fans have not seen
Mhm.
or listen to. So if you're looking for something on this list that like, oh, I want to hear a new version of Rain King that I never heard before, this is probably one of them.
Yeah,
Let's just
yeah.
say
That's
that.
again these last few. So again, I guess we're in our transition here. The ones we've talked about before are really kind of like the sort of list of Rain King alts, right? The things that like have been used pretty regularly over the course of the years. Now we're getting into stuff that's more kind of one-off, interesting things that are less common. This is what again,
Yep.
certainly this arrangement with this thing is not common at all, and it's kind of a cool thing. I think I'm the one that uploaded this video, and it's only got like 500 views. So
Yeah, I see that
yeah,
because
not a lot
probably
of
yeah,
people have
great.
seen this one.
No, fantastic. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Okay.
um,
So let's go to number 10 of 12. So this is a show we've talked about a bunch. I guess at one point, I'm not really, it's funny on the Sullivan Street podcast, one of the things I wasn't planning on doing necessarily was reviewing an entire live show that was not an official live release. But
Mm.
I think one exception to that might be one that we've mentioned multiple times and featured here, which is the Codfish Hollow Barn one,
Hmm.
2012 ranking. I don't have a lot of particular comments. I do want you to talk about what alts they're using, or
Yeah, and this is
some
one
home.
I don't think they ever did before. It did before or after.
Yeah,
So I wanted to have at least one on here that was an Adam riffing version, right? Because it, with Rain King, there's a lot of different interesting ones where they're kind of riffing, especially now. Most of the time, if there's an alt, it's really just Adam kind of riffing off a couple of lines.
yeah.
This is an interesting, longer one, like a kind of comeback Maria. I want to be what you dream about at night, and I don't want this dream of mine to come true without you, which is kind of an interesting thing. And then he references, I'm positive, right? My ears weren't deceiving me. He talks about comeback Maria at the beginning, and then at the end, he's talking about come home Amelia.
Yeah,
Unless I
exactly.
misheard the
That's what I
beginning.
wasn't sure about. Exactly. I
Yeah,
wrote that. Come home, Amelia. Yeah.
yeah, which obviously Amelia is the one, the Miami and that stuff,
Yeah.
that era. And Maria is, whether Maria is a person or Adam has been one of the great Counting Crows debates. But it's a really interesting kind of piece of just Adam riffing, and the version is great. And yeah, I don't think we talked too much about this one when we did the Codfish Hollow discussion. So yeah, I think it's worth pulling this one out again and kind of taking a look
Oh,
at
it's
it.
just a great. I mean, I don't know. This is almost like Pete. I mean, as I said before, maybe the only knock about the Codfish Hollow is if it was right after Underwater Sunshine, right? So if you don't want to, so if you want to see those songs played, which they don't play a lot, this is a
Yeah,
great show. You might think that there's too many covers because they're featuring some of those shows. That would be the only possible argument. But would you argue that this overall show and Rain King's on there, this 9 minute version, is one of the most intense shows. Like they have high
yeah,
intensity the entire time. Like this is basically like you almost wonder did they have to take drugs ahead of time? Like they're on 100 out of 100 the whole show,
yeah.
and it's fantastic. So
Yeah, I think 2012 was a great year for them, and that's thing. I think this is the peak of that,
yeah,
and it's very. If you haven't watched that whole show and you're a fan of this band, like definitely go do it because it's just they're so great all the way through. That's why I mean that echoes the Outlaw Roadshow album, which again we'll get to down the line, is really good because that whole tour they were crushing it. Like I flew out to
yeah,
LA to see the end of that tour, just they'd been so good. And also because my wife wanted to see No Doubt, but that was actually one of the
yeah,
perfect travel weekends I've ever had from a because my wife was like, should we go to LA? Like No Doubt is coming back and they're playing the Universal Amphitheater. And then I looked at the schedule and I was like, well, you're telling me we can see the Crows in LA, go to No Doubt, and then the next night we can see the Crows again in Anaheim,
yeah.
and she was on board with it, and so we that was tremendous music travel weekend because No Doubt was great too. I mean, no Doubt's not my favorite band, but if you ever get a chance to see No
I'm
Doubt
sure they
live,
put a
they're
good show
they're pretty
together.
great.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, that was a great musical weekend. But 2012 Crows, man, they were a hot shit band that year, more so than they're again always great, but that year is one I think one of their peaks, and that
Yeah,
was
they had a
pretty amazing.
couple, and it's funny because they've done. I don't know too much of a tangent. There's certain songs that they know exactly how to play now, and Adam's voice might not be able to reach everything, but it's still great so many of the times. But age is something that catches up on all of us. And I was thinking around this time they were like late 40s, right? So still
Hmm.
relatively young. And you said I think they were kind of reinvigorated at that time. I think this was a great time of the band post their popularity as a whole, I guess,
Yeah,
national popularity.
yeah,
I do agree with you. And they released, by the way, both of those, Wonderland and like they were all kind of back to it because didn't they have
yeah.
like Echoes plus Underwater Sunshine and then Somewhere in the Wonderland were pretty close back to back to back, right?
Yeah. It's kind of the last, and we'll talk about this more, I guess, when we get over to those records, but like it's kind of the last big evolution of the band,
Yeah,
evolutionary period, right? Because going from doing all those covers to doing Somewhere Under Wonderland, you know, and then the band, from like 20, because 2014 is Somewhere Under Wonderland,
yeah,
2015 to 2018, there's not a ton
No.
of band evolution, I guess is what I'd say. Right? The band is still out there on tour and they're great. They're you know doing playing a lot of great shows, but
Yeah.
they're not evolving as quickly as they were over like
Right.
you go from 2012 2014, there's a lot happening, and that's very different than 2009 and 10, which is very different from 2006 and 7.
Yeah.
There's like
Yeah. No,
they
that's right. They were. It was 12, 13, 14. By the way, Underwater Sunshine 2012, Echoes 2013, and then Somewhere 2014. And then I think part of that is not only their age, but Adams talked about he was disappointed in the sales of Somewhere Under Wonderland, and that really upset him. And not just the sales, but the overall reception and impact on society. So. But I agree with you. I think this energy that they're bringing was from recording, and that they had released Underwater Sunshine, and they were gonna start working on a new album, right? Like, and
yeah
this kind of new energy was in there in that time, and it shows up. And so go watch Codfish Hollow. We might have to do a whole episode on that one of these times. So
yeah
okay, so we got two more to go. Let's go to, and this, I had no idea about this alt version. So this was from 2013.
mm-hmm.
Had the entire band. This was a Sirius XM promo, but not the Troubadour show. This was at the Spectrum, in a recording studio. It looks like, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the course
And
studio.
the whole band was there, and slow tempo, but with the whole band, and it had a Washington Square interlude.
Yeah, pretty. I mean, they made if they did it more than once or twice other than this, it's not much. So yeah, this is kind of an interesting like one-off version. And Washington Square, I think, especially in that acoustic version, maybe part they haven't played it acoustic as much back in the day because it does feel like that's another one that does kind of fit the tempo and the
Yeah.
vibe. Um, it's sort of almost an updating, right? If you think about the original version being Adam in San Francisco, like there is that sense that character, that narrator you can see how they would also be kind of wandering through Washington Square trying to find something.
Hmm.
They step out
Yep.
the door and they're walking around through Washington Square. They used to be walking through San Francisco trying to find this girl, and now maybe they're, hopping uptown up to Union Square or something like that, or Chelsea. Um so yeah, I think I like this one. And again, it's one of the if you're not if you weren't watching YouTube videos or like performance stuff in 2013, this one might have slipped you by. So I wanted to get that one in here because I think it's a very good version. Um, and it's nice. It's a good one.
Might be one of the only one. Oh no, that wouldn't be true because he'd be 2012. I was going to say Millard's in this one, although he's not in a lot of these. So
Yeah.
okay, good. So then we have the final one from your list of the worth checking out
Mhm.
Rain King versions, catching a wide variety of, as you said, the pace, tempo, and the lyrics and everything else. This is from 2013.
Mhm.
It was from the tour with the Wallflowers. I guess Wallflowers are not
Yeah.
joining them.
No.
Hammerstein Ballroom. Were you at this one?
I was there again. Yeah, that's another one I was at. But yeah, I wanted to pull this one out. The lyrics here are from a song called "Stay" by the Blue Nile that Adam has
Oh,
talked about that band a lot on his podcast. And I think I can't remember if we talked about on air or off air, but we talked with Chris Porterfield because I know he's a big fan of them, of the Blue Nile as well. And so I just wanted to drop this one because it's kind of interesting. They only played this 2 or 3 times. I know they played this like the next night in Buffalo, and maybe they played this a bit more after that. But it's a really nice one. The lyrics, the song is called "Stay." It's like "Stay and I will understand you,"
hmm.
which I also think again it's a song that really works with Rain King, of that pleading kind of character. And also again, if you've heard Adam wax poetic about the Blue Nile on his podcast, this is just kind of interesting to hear him kind of combine those things. I think he said this was some like a dare from Bryson or something they were joking about, and he
Okay.
just decided to like bust it out. They'd never done it before, and just kind of like surprise Bryson and see where it went.
Oh,
And it went pretty well, and I think it's a pretty good version of it.
so
So yeah,
who sings the original song?
the Blue Nile.
Okay.
They're an English band from the '80s.
Yeah.
There's like basically like a whole episode of the Underwater Sunshine podcast about this band.
Okay. I'll have to listen to
Um,
that one.
yeah, and they're really cool. They're sort of like an early 80s electronic band. They were
Yeah, okay.
apparently, there's some story, and I may be getting this slightly off, but their first album was basically made as a demo of like an early Moog synthesizer or something.
Okay.
The idea was like to like sort of show off what this thing can do, and like they literally it became an album, and so it's a very cool, it's a very 80s sounding record. Um, but
but
it's a
is it
very cool
and
record.
and isn't this going back to stuff we've talked about before, and I guess maybe model society,
Mm.
and doesn't this tie into like what some of the ideas of the original bands might have been, and
Hmm.
like in the Song of New Frontier, which is obviously right a tribute to 80s British, I don't know,
Yeah.
synth pop, is that what they call it?
Hmm.
So
Yeah, I mean, this is these things tend to be kind of slower than New Frontier, but yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I definitely think this is sort of a harken back to maybe where the band was kind of coming from. Um,
or thinking about it, at least.
Especially, when you think about like the demos a little bit, right, where they still had some of that slickness.
Yeah,
Like part of what kind of happens is there's that original kind of concept
yeah,
of where maybe Adam's mind was in the 80s that sort of evolves into before we all hear August, right? The band has sort of evolved away from that in a certain way, but
yeah.
yeah, there's a sense that Blue Nile record is kind of a like the influence of a different or earlier version of what this band could have been if they'd
Okay.
been more together. And again, it's just a cool version of the song.
Yeah,
I
I
wouldn't put it at the top, but
no, and speaking of which, I really like, I guess that ties into it a little bit, but during the interlude, they have like the sound effects in the back are different. I think it's like kind of, it's almost like electronic. I don't know if you noticed
hmm,
that. I couldn't tell if it was Vickery or Charlie or both. I mean, I always love when
hmm,
Dan Vickery does, some people don't like it. I love when he adds his little guitar effects to things. That's one of my favorite parts of Dan, actually. So yeah, re-listen to that when we sign off here. But there's something going on during the interlude. It might be both of them
yeah.
that I like, that I definitely have never heard in any other live version of Rain King. So
Well, what I'll do off Eric, I'll send you a version that's like a much cleaner sounding version. 'Cause this is just like an
okay,
audience tape, but there's versions that are just a clean, in
okay,
terms of like the sounds. If you're picking out stuff, so
trying to figure out. Yeah, okay. So well, thank you, Chris, for putting that list together, and thank the audience for listening. Hope you check it out. We will attach or link to Chris's list on our YouTube channel as
hmm,
well, which is I don't even know what it is. I think it's just Sullivan Street, right?
hmm.
Sullivan Street Counting Crows podcast. So I think Sullivan Street podcast is actually the handle. Anything else you want to add before we sign off?
I think that's it. Go listen to like 10 versions of Rain King in a row. You don't have to watch our playlist. Just go listen to 10 versions of Rain King, and
Yep.
it's what one should do with their day.
And figure out why right, why you should come in out from the rain or
Yeah.
whatever.
I
So
feel like the next big one we got to do Elizabeth at some point, and that's but we got to build up to that. I feel like we went like a year between Round Here and Rain,
yeah,
maybe 2026 we'll go real deep into Goodnight Elizabeth for another hour.
yeah, and even if we didn't do this, Rain King is worth talking about because of the importance of the song to both the live shows and their identity and everything. So no, I appreciate it. And I appreciate you guys listening, and we'll have more exciting episodes about Counting Crows in 2025, and hopefully we'll get some new music relatively soon.
That's what they say.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Thank you so much. See you down here on Sullivan Street. Bye bye.